Welcome to the Heat Pumped podcast, where we talk about heat pumps and opportunities to accelerate their deployment across the US. I'm excited for my conversation with our guest today, Clay McCombe, who works on workforce development for heat pumps in Colorado. Clay, what do you do?
Thanks for having me. And I should just say too, this is our first time meeting, just live right now on this podcast. So it's nice to meet you as a guest, but also just as a fellow heat pump enthusiast. Yeah, my name is Clay McCombe. I use he, him pronouns, and I really focus on, or have focused on for the last 5 to 6 years, workforce development, particularly for new to the workforce workers, so people seeking opportunity for economic mobility and good paying jobs, quality jobs, safe jobs. And I've done that in the nonprofit world before, but after the nonprofit world, I really moved more into local government in a climate setting where I was still doing workforce development, and the climate office that hired me said, your job is to scale the heat pump workforce in Denver. And literally, I'm not kidding. In the job interview, I said, I don't know what a heat pump is, but if you give me a chance and hire me, I will, dedicate the next year of my life to just becoming a sponge and a student to this technology. If there's as much demand as your office is investing, then clearly there's a lot of opportunity here, and kind of bringing my passion of opportunity for social justice and workforce development into this magic piece of technology that they say could be the single biggest contributor to reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And so I kind of just fell into it, and yeah, I've just kind of been blown away by what this could mean, what the technology is, and how this is kind of like when solar first started and electric vehicles first started, but it doesn't quite have that catchiness to it. So I like being an early adopter too. So I was just like, man, I it feels like a gold rush. I'm out here in Colorado. We have the Denver Nuggets for the golden nuggets, the gold rush. That's what it feels like with heat pumps is there's all these golden nuggets of not only demand for this technology, but I think on the other side of that, we see just this huge demand for a career that can be extremely lucrative, extremely rewarding, both from an environmental standpoint, but also just from a home comfort standpoint, to know that you're improving people's lives in their homes or their multifamily buildings or industrial buildings. It can be extremely rewarding, and I want to spread that opportunity as far as I can here in Denver.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it sounds like your passion is really centered around people. Like, tell me more about the people that you work with.
Yeah. Well, when I first got into workforce development, the nonprofit I worked with focused on a few different demographics of underserved communities, but one in particular that we mostly focused on was folks that were transitioning from the prison system back into society. So, folks that were finishing their sentence, served their time, made a mistake, committed a crime, or didn't commit a crime and were wrongfully convicted, and they were getting ready to go back into society. And that was an area I was interested in, but didn't have a ton of experience in myself. And then suddenly found myself actually going into prisons, talking, sitting down face to face with current incarcerated men and women, and asking them how they were feeling about, getting ready to, this day that you imagine as being the most anticipated day of, the last decade in some cases, multiple decades. And instead of being excited for that freedom and that second chance, there's so much fear because of how much uncertainty there is out there, that the world has changed. I worked with folks that were appalled that they had to make an email address in order to get a job. They're like, why do I have to do this? The world has just changed so much. And
Yeah.
so I just got this one in every three Americans has some sort of criminal legal involved background. And so that was really eye-opening to me. And then so we would do job training for middle skill occupations, which in the workforce world means occupations that require more than a high school degree, but maybe less than a bachelor's degree. So we're looking at a lot of those like electrician jobs or HVAC technicians, plumbers, pipe fitters, the blue collar workforce. And we've had studies, but we also see time and time again there's a huge labor gap in those industries. And I think that's across the nation. You could talk to anyone in the building science trades and they could say, yeah, We need the phrase I hear all the time is bodies in trucks. We need bodies in trucks. So that's where the bar is. It's not a certain criteria of training. It's just, can I get a warm body to show up in my truck and even be willing to be trained on this stuff? A lot of times paid training. So yeah, the people that I met working in and out of the prison system were some of the most hardworking, dedicated, real individuals I've ever met. And they were incredibly easy for me to advocate for to businesses on why they should hire them. Because I would say, my person is going to outwork anyone on your payroll right now. Your team is complaining about Mondays. And my guy here is fighting for another chance at life. And oftentimes they would live up to that expectation. So that's a huge passion of mine and definitely a different angle than, I think a lot of folks bring to the workforce world. But my dream is to really help that 1/3 of the American population looking for quality work to fill as much as they can the demand uh, in the labor gap of the building science trades and take advantage of this gold rush, this heat pump opportunity.
That's that's super interesting because I feel like you just described my ideal like technician employee there. It's like I think the biggest challenges with working with new technicians who haven't been in the trade before is just how brutal the work is, right? Like you spend all day in an attic, you spend all day in a crawl space. It's tight enclosed spaces. It's very physical manual work. It is like incredibly demanding, but it's also really rewarding. Like at the end of the day, when you put in a heat pump and it's working, and you help a family be comfortable again in their house, it's like really rewarding. It pays well. There's a lot to that. I think one thing that I've struggled with early career apprentices is that they don't have the hunger, right? Like they don't want to be there. They want the paycheck, but they aren't necessarily like willing to put up with the working conditions. And it's something that like a lot of the experienced technicians tell me over and over is like, I just want someone who's hungry and wants to be there. Like that's the most important thing, is that they want to be there and they want to make themselves better. So yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's tough, I mean, we see a generation before who works so hard to provide this lifestyle for their kids so the kids don't have to struggle. And then they grow up to adults who haven't really struggled that much. And it makes them a little more fragile. And now we're faced with a dilemma, right? So there's no perfect way about it, but potentially rebranding what the building science trades are, not the traditional blue collar stereotype. A lot of this is marketing to moms and dads, those dinner table conversations where a kid is trying to decide if they should go to an apprentice, like a paid apprenticeship, or if they should go get a liberal arts degree from CU Boulder.
Sure.
And it's hard. There's a lot of pressure and expectations. So
Yeah.
youth are another in the workforce world. Youth is 18 to 24-year-olds, and that's another demographic that we're catering some of the work for here at Dr. Cock, where I work.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up because I've had this conversation with my wife, and it's like if our kids are interested in getting into the trades and like being an electrician or a plumber in HVAC, like is that something that you would be okay with, right? And it's something that I'm very much okay with, but I'm still working with her to like get over that like mental, I don't know if stigma is the right word for it, but it's like there's almost this feeling that we've worked really hard to get ourselves out of needing to do the hard work. But it's like on the other hand, I one of my the very best technicians I ever worked with, like he had a desk job for the first part of his career, and he just found that it was stifling and it didn't work for him, and he hated sitting in front of a desk and in front of a computer. And he's like told me like the last thing in the world that I would ever want to do is like sit in a desk and work 40 hours a week. Like I love this work. I love being in the field. I love like turning the wrenches. So
It's funny how little of traditional college degree involves on the job training. Whereas it's fundamental to apprenticeships. I mean, if we're doing a training cohort for a heat pump company and there's like a week of on-the-job shadowing and training, and at the end of that week, someone says, I really didn't like that at all. And they decide that is not the career for me.
Yeah.
How great, right? What great feedback to learn after a week, pretty low cost, low risk, and potentially saved yourself from a career you didn't really like. But when we think about these college degrees, there's no job shadowing and there's these huge financial investments going into massive debt. And then your first month on the job, you're like, oh my God, I think I hate this. It's just like, to me, we're laughing, but it is like, it is so crazy to me that that's kind of the system that's set up to take advantage of young people and the pressure that we put on young people to know what they want to do with their life without trying things first. So I think we're on the verge of an interesting time in the workforce development world where people are exploring different options. I think there's a lot more interest in being an entrepreneur, content creators, and is there going to be a wave of HVAC technicians or heat pump technicians that are creating content and live streaming their installs? Like,
Yeah.
we got to get creative if we're going to make this relevant and really fill the trades gap.
Yeah, I that's a good segue because I think there's an incredible career path that you can have within the trades, right? Like you start out in the field, but there are so many different ways that you can go with it. Like you can become an estimator and then you're doing the sales and you're having those conversations with the customers on what's the best system for their house. You can, like you said, go into content, you can help like develop people, you can go into training other technicians, but also I think one of the biggest like career paths in HVAC is a lot of the very best technicians then go off to start their own businesses. And I'm curious, like on your end, how do you think we should be thinking about supporting those technicians that are transitioning from having turned a wrench for 5 years to starting their own HVAC company?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and it's something I think about a lot. Like the HVAC workforce demographic. I've overseen some studies, at least relevant to Denver and Colorado, on the demographic that makes up those trades, and it's pretty significantly in one direction, in one corner of the ring, as far as the age range. We're looking at typically over 45 years old, white identifying males, and I think a lot about the culture of these jobs that we're promoting. We're promoting more diversity and equity in these jobs, and so I get anxiety sometimes because I'm like, man, if I'm working with someone in a program and promoting this awesome career in heat pumps, it's going to be so amazing. And they happen to be, say, someone who has identifying as female. And then day one on the job, like, are they going to get harassed by someone on their job site or for whatever other reason? Like, is the culture of this industry even ready for more of that inclusion? And part of me, even convincing the current industry to adopt heat pumps. Colorado's a natural gas state, and our studies show that only about 13 to 15% of our contractors here are installing heat pumps, or are properly trained to install heat pumps. And so the majority of the market doesn't do this. And I spend a lot of my time, Shreyas, like almost advocating, trying to convince these legacy contractors, we'll call them, to be more inclusive or to consider new technology, or not even new because heat pumps aren't new, but like modern cold climate technology. And, some of them, that stick their feet in the sand and, I'm 30 years old with a man bun and I have not been an HVAC technician. Why should they listen to me? I get that. I get the optics of it, but part of it, I came to a realization a while ago. I was like, man, should I spin my wheels trying to convince these legacy contractors to change their ways, or should we shift our efforts into inspiring a new generation of contractors to be entrepreneurs, start their own businesses, and then create the culture that they want to create? that is more accepting of climate technology and is more accepting of all backgrounds, and giving opportunities, to folks that have been historically underserved. And that just resonates with me. So one way we can do that, if a contractor or if a HVAC technician is looking to start their own business, we are funding a small business accelerator specifically for heat pump businesses that are 5 or less employees, and hopefully within their first couple of years of business. And so those cohorts will be 6 months. They will be 100% free, and ideally a stipend will be paid to each participant. And there'll be small class sizes, like 6 to 10 max. Like maybe five to six, new business owners or small business owners teamed up with hopefully mentors and just given a lot of tools, techniques, and advice and resources to help grow and scale their business from folks that have maybe more experience or decades of experience or a larger operation, and sharing some of those, hey, I wish I had known this 10 years ago, or here's what you're going to want to do when it comes to hiring, or hey, set up your Google reviews and your Yelp reviews, like, whatever the tips and tricks are to help grow your heat pump business, that's going to be the foundation of what we want to accomplish with this small business scaling program. And that'll be running every year through 2029 is what we have funding for.
That's awesome. I actually went through a similar program here in California when I got my heat pump company off the ground, and it was incredible. Like, it was a group of people in the skilled trades who had relatively small companies, and they brought in experts from successful electrification contractors who had been doing it and had commercial success, like selling heat pumps and heat pump water heaters and insulation and all of those things. And I think having role models that show that this can be done, this is something that's possible, is incredible, because you don't necessarily know like where this can go, hurdles you have to jump over to get there, and what actually drives the needle to business success. Because the things that make someone a successful HVAC technician are very much not the same things that make someone a successful HVAC business owner. And so filling in a lot of those gaps is really important. Yeah, that's really cool. And I think
Like,
there's also,
as a graduate of a program like that, I mean, is that something you would advocate for? Like, was it helpful for you in your business and what you've been able
yeah,
to accomplish so far?
absolutely. I mean, I think to me, like, I came in already knowing a lot about heat pumps with an engineering background, and like I was already sold on the technology. But what I saw in that classroom was a lot of people that were unconvinced, right? And like they were still like, this is some weird new technology. Like, is it worth me putting my cart behind this horse? And being able to see people that have built companies around this, and showing like, look, we can sell on value with a heat pump, we can improve the comfort of people's houses, we can make them more safe, this technology is better, it's quieter, like, people want this, and you just have to connect with them and show them why they want this. I saw a lot of light bulbs going off in the classroom, and I think the other side of it is just like, there is so much raw talent, and there are so many like incredibly talented and empathetic, and like all of these people want their customers to have, like, they want to do right by their customers. And I think nobody wants to do right by their customers more than a small business owner who's getting off the ground, and like all you want is like that 5-star review, and you want that customer to say, I loved working with you. And so like there's just so much grit and hustle, and like it's just like the right pool of talent that, like, I think a little goes a long way.
And when we are in a market where there is a huge labor gap and there's more demand than there is supply, I think that dedication to customer service and the user experience, it can afford to drop significantly because there's not that pressure to keep every single customer and to have the best possible outcome, because you're overwhelmed with work. You have more work than you know what to do with. So really, hey, I can I can be late, I can smoke on the job, I can cuss around my homeowner, because, if I'm established and I've been in the industry for a while, I know that they need me more than I need them. And when we bring in a more competitive market and more businesses are out there, suddenly those again legacy contractors are realizing, my gosh, like I'm losing customers to the new younger blood that's coming in that's prioritizing the customer experience, or maybe I do need to start installing heat pumps even though I don't believe in the technology, or maybe my thoughts on climate change are different, but from a business standpoint, I need to adapt to stay relevant. I think increasing the competitiveness of the market will only increase the level of quality and integrity that the industry is bringing to the market. So I'm excited. And frankly, I haven't felt a lot of like gatekeeping and caginess with industry contractors. It seems to me like they want to pass that torch and they want to share and educate, especially contractors that are getting older and maybe thinking of retiring soon. I think the role of qualified and just the wealth of knowledge of that era coming back as instructors or mentors, I've found that there's a huge appetite for that for contractors with, decades of experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also a 30-year-old with a man bun who like does not look like your traditional HVAC contractor, right? And I think what I've found in my experience is like people really appreciate when you ask questions and you want to learn and you respect their knowledge and you know that you don't know everything, but that's okay. Like I think I've just found that that goes a really long way, and people want to help you. They want to like help you succeed. I'm in a bunch of like Facebook group chats with other like small HVAC company owners, and whenever someone posts a question, 15 people jump in with answers, and they help them debug technical issues. They like share their pricing. They like help them understand like how to deal with a unhappy customer. Like everyone, it's a very like helpful community, and like as much as you kind of talked about like if you're perhaps you like identify as a woman or like you're like maybe like a minority like coming into this trade, like there are still kind of rough edges and like those challenges, but on the other side I do see it like there is a lot of inclusivity too, and like a lot of like um
Yeah, yeah, it definitely. I realize I might be coming across as negative towards the industry. I've met some really, really, passionate, dedicated, inclusive, contractors that have been doing this for a long time as well. So it's definitely, we don't want the bad actors to be the ones that define the whole industry. But yeah, we need everyone at the table if we're gonna be prepared for what the future holds.
yeah. So what are some of the biggest initiatives that you're working on right
Yeah, that's awesome. I just get so excited about them. It's programs I've kind of been scoping and designing for the last year and a half or so, and we're finally getting to a point where we're about implementation. And so, this is incredibly exciting for me. I work for Dr. Cog, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, and recently they were awarded a grant from the EPA for climate pollution reduction. So we have just shy of $200 million dollars to spend through 2029, hopefully to build out a building decarbonization initiative here in the Denver region. It's kind of beyond Denver, like Boulder, Douglas County, Aurora. So I don't know how familiar you are with Colorado, but kind of the broader metro region here in Denver. About 50% of our population is in this area, and we have a few different initiatives that we're implementing with those funds to change the market. But I was hired on to kind of prepare the industry for that and also the new workforce. So those are my two program categories: is existing industry, creating tools for them, and then a few programs for bringing in fresh new blood to the workforce. I'll say the current industry one, just at a very high level, we're developing a contractor navigation hub, which will essentially be a very popular term, a one-stop shop for contractors that ostensibly will have a digital marketplace of all the different heat pump resources that are out there, startups, companies that support contractors with various needs with their heat pump projects. That's also where the small business scaling program will live. But what I'm most excited about on that program is this concept that we're rolling out where there's going to be a team of heat pump agents. The heat pump agents essentially can be available for hire if you have a heat pump project. And, the number one feedback I hear from contractors who don't adopt heat pump technology is the administrative burden that it is placed on them for whether it's rebate navigation or knowing what equipment is eligible. Some even advocate against heat pumps just so they've told me to my face just so they didn't have to deal with all the paperwork.
Right.
What a silly reason, right? Even if they believe in the technology, if it's some bureaucratic or administrative reason, we should fix that. And so coming from a government perspective, I was just like, this is so silly. Let's use our resources to streamline this. So this team of agents, you can hire them for a project, hire them. It's going to be a free service to cover the entire paperwork process, start to finish, for any given heat pump project, meaning they will apply for the rebates for you. They'll tell you what the equipment specs are and essentially give you a wrapped in a bow recommendation. Then, as the contractor, all you really have to do is go satisfy the customer, do a proper install, show them how to use it, and then you're good to go. So you can spend less time on the business and more time in the business. So that's one program we're rolling out here this year. So I'm super excited about that.
That is awesome, and I think very much solving a real need. I think with a lot of these heat pump incentive programs, there have been unintended consequences, and I think there's a lot of very well-meaning administrators that have built these incentive programs to disperse all these funds, accelerate the adoption of heat pumps, but like on the other side, it has pushed a lot of administrative burden onto the contractors who, like I said, like a lot of these guys, the last thing they want to do is spend time sitting in front of a desk, like sorting through like paperwork and like looking at equipment specs. So that's awesome.
Thanks. My mantra is like, how do we hit the easy button for our contractors? And it's required me to really get in the field with contractors, meet with them, sit down with them, and really take the time in person. Getting the feedback I got to design this program, it could not have been accomplished through Microsoft surveys or doodle polls. Like, you have to show up,
Yeah.
show up where the action is happening and at these stakeholder meetings, and really listen more than talk. And that's been a big lesson for me, but something that's hopefully paying off.
Yeah. And I think I'm curious what your take is on this, but I think a lot of like heat pump action going in the next few years is going to be very hyper locally focused. And I think local government and like local activism is going to play a big role.
Having worked in local government, now I'm kind of in a regional government role, but
Yeah.
you know, so fortunate to work for a progressive city like Denver. Voters voted in 2020 for a fund for climate action in Denver through a sales tax. So my position and all the work we executed was done through what's called the Climate Protection Fund, which was a 0.25% sales tax in the city and county of Denver that roughly equated to $40 million a year in an annual budget, all for climate action in the city. So when I talk to other cities about like, what should we do for our city in order to, increase climate action or green workforce development, I say a $40 million ballot initiative is a great place to start because you can definitely do a lot. And I didn't take it for granted. I know a lot of local governments do a lot more with a lot less resources. Yeah, power to the locals. Absolutely.
Yeah. And what do you think beyond just like raising funds? Like, what are things that other local governments and like policymakers can take from what you're doing and mirror in their own programs?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about workforce development, and I guess climate-based workforce development, most local governments, I'd say, if they have a sustainability office, that office is usually one person for most cities, right? I mean, they are big metropolises, sure, maybe there's a green workforce designated person. We were lucky enough to have a whole team dedicated to green workforce development. Some focused on EVs, some focused on solar. I was focused on heat pumps. But most local governments aren't going to have those resources to dedicate all their time to it. So, there's a few different options. But when it comes to increasing, what locals can do and local workforce development can do to increase and address, I guess, decrease the labor gap is getting in touch with your local workforce center. It's kind of a concept I don't know if too many people are familiar with, but a lot of local governments have public workforce centers where it's an office and there are people whose full-time job is to help you, the job seeker, get placed into a career that matches your needs. A lot of those workforce centers have funding to cover barriers that you might be facing, like the cost of childcare. And sometimes there's stipends to cover the cost of childcare during training or covering the cost of tools, which can be a barrier. Transportation, I know of programs that offer bike vouchers or bus passes on a monthly basis. So, yeah, getting in touch. There's a lot of public resources out there that I think are best kept secret. And if you have a distaste of government based on history or just perceptions, I think that's completely warranted and understandable. But at a local level, I just think there's a ton of resources that often communities are unaware that they're paying for with taxes. And so, yeah, getting engaged with your public workforce center, and then from the employer side too, like you have a heat pump business, when you're ready to start hiring, if you want to hire more technicians, getting in touch with some local workforce focused CBOs, community based organizations, like the one I worked for. You're going to find that hunger in those community based organizations that you just won't find on LinkedIn or Indeed. Getting involved in the community and really telling those organizations what you're looking for from a values perspective. I think the technical terms you can probably teach anybody who's willing to learn, but those intrinsic moral values and character traits that can't be taught, you'll find that tenfold in your local community-based organizations, and you'll really get a chance to uplift some great organizations in your community and find lifelong employees in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm personally a huge fan of hiring people for potential rather than current skill set. And I think like everything I've seen in HVAC is like it's teachable. I taught myself watching YouTube videos, and I've been lucky to also have some good mentors along the way that like helped fill in those gaps that YouTube alone didn't do. But like I think it's 100 times more important to have the right attitude and like want to be there than anything else.
Totally agree. Speaking of gaps, I'll plug the other program that we're launching called Gaps, and this is more about getting more representation into the heat pump workforce. We're designing 3 GAPS programs, growth access programs is what we're calling them, GAPS. And these are going to be heat pump training cohorts for 3 specific communities that lack representation in the industry. One, again, based on my background, is going to be a formerly incarcerated training program. It's actually a little more progressive. It's a currently incarcerated training program. So a cohort we're going to launch next year will have 15 participants that are nearing the end of their sentence, meaning 6 months or less. So they're getting ready to re-enter society. They'll go through heat pump training for those last 6 months, continue training on the outside for the next 6 months, and then jump right into employment with a fair chance employer. That's one GAP program. Another is addressing language barriers we have here in Denver with the workforce. So there will be a heat pump training program. We'll say, for example, in Spanish, because we have a huge Spanish speaking population here in Denver, where it won't just be translated training, but of a fluent instructor in Spanish, teaching Spanish HVAC principles to Spanish speaking students, getting them hired by Spanish speaking contractors, and then installing heat pumps in Spanish speaking households, if that's the language you go for, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a huge barrier too. Like if English isn't your first language in your home, and then somebody comes in and is ripping out your appliances and they're in your nooks and crannies of your home, and there's not even you can't even have a conversation, or there's cultural barriers. That's an incredibly uncomfortable experience, and probably a reason a lot of non-English speaking households wouldn't be comfortable with, something like that. But if you are able to see a little more relatability and representation, it's going to increase access for that community. So that's our second program. And then the third is the same concept, but with youth. So a youth training program, getting mentors assigned to, after school programs, CTE programs, but helping bring a wave of young future professional technicians into the workforce. So those are the GAPS programs, and I'm so excited to roll them out. It's going to be really cool.
That's awesome. Who are your like role models? Like what are cities or jurisdictions or maybe people that are doing workforce development really well?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the program design that I was inspired by was in Chicago. The CEJA program, Clean Equitable Jobs Act. They actually made a law about designing some of these programs, but I think the Contractor Navigation Hub program proposal that we're launching, I was totally inspired by Chicago's Contractor Incubator, is I think what they call it,
Sure.
which kind of has a small business scaling. They also had a returning residents program where folks who were formerly incarcerated could get training on, climate science technology programs. So I think they're great. I'm really inspired by Massachusetts as well and their Mass Save program. That's kind of what we're trying to build out here in Colorado. And just having a one-stop shop that covers all of a contractor's needs. I'm sure, no program is perfect. Each industry has their own hurdles. Minnesota offers a beneficial electrification electric rate. Folks that, are transitioning to heat pumps get a lower electric rate to incentivize it. I think I think Colorado should adopt that. Oregon and Washington both have pretty significant climate investments as well. And San Diego has a really cool workforce community as well. Really across the country, there's so many really much smarter people than me working on this stuff and talking about the job opportunity with heat pumps. And I just try and network as much as I can just to try and absorb some of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've talked a lot about people, the people installing heat pumps and the people selling heat pumps, but like ultimately, like we said, like not everyone is set up to be a technician. Like it's not the right job for everyone. And I imagine there's a lot of people that see your job and get really excited by it. And I'm curious, like, what advice do you have to people that are trying to get into workforce development or like into accelerating heat pumps from other angles like you are?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was definitely someone in my 20s who just tried everything. I describe it as like taking Costco samples of like different careers. Like I just dipped my toe in a lot of different pools. I was in sales for a while. I was a server for a while, and I didn't even know this was a thing, workforce development. And really truly just stumbled into it. I guess advice for anyone looking to get into this is when you think about, I guess, something that's kind of economy proof or I should say like recession proof or getting people jobs, providing opportunity equitably in your community, that will always add value. And there's such a high demand for it. And there are progressive cities like Denver and Boston and Seattle and San Diego that are working on stuff like this. But I'd say most cities are not quite there yet. And there's going to be a lot of demand. All these incentives on the supply side for heat pumps, they're going to realize pretty quickly that they have a demand issue. And that's the argument for workforce development is this is your demand lever. And so really for me in my career, I think what I've decided is, I will only, take jobs, whether they're related to workforce or not, only take jobs where it's outward facing and you're facing a network and you're meeting new people. I've just absorbed so much knowledge through my interactions with others. I found they want to give advice for free if you're willing to ask. So I'd say for me, for any career advice, really, is just letting go of the fear and maybe misconception in your brain that people don't want to share their knowledge with you or share their advice with you. I think a lot of really smart and successful people are just waiting for someone to ask them. And fortunately, I've had some mentors in my life that, I just approached and said, "How did you get where you got?" Or why are you passionate about this? Or if you were in my shoes, what advice would you give me? People have very generously shared so many lessons and connections completely for free with me. And I'm just so grateful. It's when you meet people where they're at and look them in the eyes, uh, it's amazing what they're willing to just offer up and share. That we don't live in a gatekeeping world, in the workforce world. We want everyone to come to the table. There's plenty to eat. And yeah, if you want to get into workforce, come talk to me because we need more people excited about this stuff.
That's awesome. Um, any parting thoughts that you'd like to leave the audience with beyond that?
Man, if you're listening to this for some reason and you're taking a new step in your career or you're not sure what you want to do with your life, I would definitely look around locally and see if your local HVAC contractor would just allow a ride along or a job shadow, come check it out. Like I said, take a Costco sample, dip your toe in the water, see what it's all about. I think there's so much opportunity in this field and yeah, it's the gold rush. So come get some before it's all taken up.
I think the good news is it will never all be taken up. It is an incredible opportunity, and there's like infinite room for growth. So it's awesome, and yeah, thanks for joining us
You
today.
asked such thoughtful questions, Shreyas. You really did. Did you have a podcast before this?
No,
It
this
seemed like
is
you're
I'm flying by the seat of my pants, just like I taught myself HVAC. I taught myself podcasting too.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. Well, yeah, thanks for being on, Clay. It was really great to get to know you better. And yeah, for our guests, like Clay said, if you're looking to get in, he's a resource. There's a lot of great resources all around for people that are trying to get into HVAC. Definitely take advantage of those. Feel free to check out our newsletter at heatpump.org. You can subscribe on whatever your favorite podcast platform is to follow future episodes of this, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, Clay.